Welcome back to Before You Vote. Our interviews with County Recorder for Maricopa County. Joining us now, Democrat candidate Tim Stringham. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
It's good to meet you.
Pleasure.
A lot of attention in this office in the last few years. A lot of people looking at this office. Let's talk about your ideas. What needs to happen in that office if you win it?
Well, for starters, I think we've got a great office. We have an enormous county recorder office. 65% of all Arizona voters are here in Maricopa County. And yes, we've had some issues with our elections, but those issues have boiled down to printer issues. I don't think that any of the negativity around the office really meets a level where people need to be worried. And so if I take over the office, what I really want to do is continue to run it in a responsible manner, learn, listen, and we'll take a hard look at the details.
When you look at the perception versus reality, how do you restore faith? There are some people that are just set in their ways, but there are other people that have legitimate questions.
Yeah.
How do you answer those questions, or what information do they need to have so they have confidence?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, you shouldn't just take your government's word for anything. You should have skepticism. That's why we have separation of powers. That's why we have diffused government authority. That's why we have federalism. But look, a lot of the false narratives around the county recorder office started with Donald Trump saying that Stephen Richard, the incumbent, had deleted the voter rolls. Not only was that abjectly false, but now we're hearing people say the opposite, that we haven't trimmed the voter rolls enough. Then you had Kari Lake saying that we inserted fake ballots into the process. Not only was that false, but Kari Lake's already admitted that in court. So does that mean you shouldn't criticize your government? No. You should always have concerns. You always want to take a close look. But everybody keeps asking what the elections office is going to do to restore faith. I'd like to know what Donald Trump and Kari Lake are going to do to restore faith after their lies.
And when you look at, and I think those are legitimate questions, when you look at where people are concerned, how long it takes to count votes. And there are a lot of things. I'll give you an example. I vote early, but I vote at the polls. In other words, I'm busy on election day. So I'll take my ballot and drop it off. Why does that vote need to be cured if I'm standing right there? Why isn't there a process where they can count my ballot as soon as I get there?
Yeah, Mike, I'm glad you asked that. There's actually legislation coming down the pipeline. I think in 2026 we'll already see that as a possibility. But what you just described are what's commonly called late earlies.
Right.
20% of all voters drop off their ballot at the polls. You've signed the envelope. It has to go through a ballot curing process. And so when that ballot finally gets to the tabulation center around midnight, they still have to go through a long process to cure it. Now, we have a lot of people that really want to see a greater percentage of people show their IDs when they drop off the vote. To me, that's where to do it. You'd have the sensation of knowing, hey, I got to see that it was tabulated. I know that my vote counted right there. The voters and the people watching would be able to see the results out just a little bit quicker on election night. And it actually would save the recorder's office, the elections department, a lot of work. It's a lot easier if you show your ID and stick it into a tabulator than if they have to go through the process of curing your ballot. So to me, that's the kind of common sense compromise that can move this process a little bit further in the right direction for everybody.
You mentioned voter rolls a few moments ago.
Mm-hmm.
We've heard of incidents where people are getting ballots mailed to their home, where people don't live there, or there are people that are on the voter rolls after they move or they pass away. Is there a need to make sure the voter rolls only have registered active voters?
Yeah, absolutely. And there are a lot of different ways in which the recorder's office already does that. I think first off, you need to keep it in perspective. There are 2.4 million voters in the Valley. 2.4 million voters. That means that yeah, there are going to be some people that hang on the voter rolls longer than they should. But the number one thing you can do if you're concerned about that, type in beballotready.vote on the internet. You can enter into your own voter profile, and you can make sure that your information is correct right now. Don't move and 6 months from now forget about it, and then they're going to send a ballot to the wrong address. Now, if that happens, we still do have safeguards, right? You have to sign under penalty of perjury that you have the right to vote. And we have a curing process for those ballots. But it saves taxpayer money and it saves you hassle and it makes everybody feel better about the system if you go to beballotready.vote tonight and update your voter registration information.
All right, last question then is about what the office needs. What would you say is the immediate need for the next person that holds this office?
Well, I think the biggest thing to remember is that it's very easy to break a thing. If you have concerns, absolutely, we want to address those concerns. It's very important that you don't have a government institution that has tens of millions of dollars every year in its budget, 140 full-time personnel, and have somebody in there who's going to be careless. You can't promise to fire everybody before you've even figured out what the human resources guides are. I think everybody who has a job has a boss knows that bosses very often make your job more difficult. The best bosses, shut up and listen. That's what I'm going to do for the first 90 days. We'll shut up and listen. We're not going to pretend like we know everything, and we're not going to produce solutions to problems that may or may not actually exist.
I appreciate the time. It's good to meet you, and I wish you well. And after the election's over, I hope we talk again.
Thanks, appreciate it, Mike.
All right, his name is Tim Stringham. He is the candidate, the Democrat candidate for Maricopa County Recorder. Be an informed voter. We'll be back in a moment.